Hi, and welcome to the Women and Money podcast. And we have got a great subject for everyone today. It's something that really intrigues me a lot, and it's something that's come up on previous podcasts as well, and has always got us talking. There's always a view to be told from very, very many different perspectives on this subject. And the subject is, why is money and talking about money such a great taboo? So I'm going to start just by asking the panel members here. So we've got Jennifer, Julie, and Michelle. I'm going to ask each one of them to tell me a time when they might have put their foot in it, when they might have mentioned something or asked a question to do with money, and they got a big shove back saying, not appropriate. And how did that make you feel?
Or
Julie?
shall I go first then? Okay, so
Yeah.
it's interesting. I think the first time, and possibly the last time I did this, I was maybe about 10 or 11. And I asked, in our house, questions were positively encouraged, which is just as well, because I was a curious child. But I can remember asking my mum and dad what my dad's salary was. And the reaction I got from them was, that's not something you ask someone. You never ask someone that. You don't talk about that. And I felt, and they weren't harsh with it, but I felt rebuked. Like I'd asked something really inappropriate. Like, something. No, I'm not going to come out with inappropriate things as examples, but it felt on a par with like asking something really inappropriate. And from that day forward, I never asked anybody that ever again until a few years ago when I realized it was really important to be transparent about what we're earning. Let's talk about this stuff. But that just stuck with me all my life, that that's something you don't do. And it left me feeling quite guilty and quite bad about things.
It's never nice to be told that you've perhaps said something you shouldn't, especially not with your own family. It surprises me that was the way within your own family.
Yeah, and I think, when I sit here and think about it now and where that comes from, because my mum and dad wouldn't have been the only people with that kind of take on things. And there'll still be people that believe that today. And I think what's behind it is that there's the fear of being judged. I think that's a big part in why money's still a taboo. It's just that if someone knows how much money you bring into a house, they're going to make a judgment on the kind of person you are. So let's say you bring in £20,000. Some people are going to go, oh, no, no, I don't want to hang out with £20,000 people. You mentioned that I bring in 200,000. People are like, whoa, wow, they must be something special. And I think that's the worry that other people will put, the meaning that people will put on the number, is that fear of judgment, I think, is behind it.
That's interesting. I still think I'd rather be going out on a night out with the person who earned 20,000 if they were more likely to go to the bar than the person who earned 200,000 who didn't. That's a very strange way of deciding who you want to hang out with. But you're right, I do think there are people like that. So, should we go to Michelle? What about you? Has there been any time where you'd felt that, oh, maybe you shouldn't have asked that question or said something about money?
Probably not from someone judging me. This was a situation where I was employed. It was mentioned at the beginning, you don't talk about your salary, but we did talk about our salaries, and we found a big difference between our salaries and brought that up with the employer. And then we were told that we should not talk about our salaries. We should not compare our salaries for the reason that obviously there was a huge disparity between them. So that was probably not something that made me feel ashamed. I was angry that actually we were being told to keep it a secret when we were all doing the same job. And we're talking, so this was sort of male female divide, that the females were certainly being paid a very different wage to the men. So I think from that point of view, and then also I think even now with clients, sometimes I ask clients and they look and go, but I don't know if I want to disclose that to you. And you think, well, I am a financial planner. It's really important that I know, but you still get people who are cagey. So yeah, not from a personal point of view, really, because my family's always been quite open about money, but definitely employer and work base where you've said something wrong.
I can
That's a
see
power
how,
play there, isn't it?
definitely, I can see how keeping that kind of information quiet from everyone would benefit certain people.
Yeah. Same with annual bonuses. We were always told that we shouldn't disclose them to our colleagues. And when we did all obviously talk about it, as we did, because we were all quite open, there was a theme then again with gender, and I think that became quite a big issue ongoing, and then they had to actually address it for it to no longer be a taboo, but it certainly wasn't something they wanted to do.
No. I've always felt it's a massive conflict of interest anyway, that often the salaries and bonuses in a team of people is decided by the senior management. And there's only a certain limited pot and they decide how it's carved up. Well, if they give a lot more if they give a large amount to the junior employees, it just leaves less for them. So of course they're not going to do that. It's not about what someone's worth or how hard they've worked. It's, often about how much do I need to take home? And then whatever's left can go to the women that don't make the noise about getting small tokens, and the people who perhaps don't work so hard to feel that they deserve it anyway. I don't know. But yeah, that's a very, very common situation, isn't it? I think things are changing a bit now, where people in workplaces are less penalized and less controlled when it comes to talking about these things. I think sex discrimination, gender discrimination legislation probably helps in that respect. So we've done work, we've done family. Have you got a social situation for us, Jennifer, or anything else?
Probably not as much social. More my kind of earlier one would be from family. So it'd be whenever I was over visiting my grandparents and they were maybe putting something in the collection for church and the little envelope, and I was always like, how much is in that? Like, what's in the envelope? And they're like, oh, it's a percentage of your earnings. And I'm like, but what is that? Like, just for a figure. And being quite shut down from that, as if it's this thing that you don't discuss. And you might know there's certainly money in the sides of something, but you're not allowed to discuss it. It's almost this shame or secretiveness that's are kind of surrounding it.
And I think that's interesting, the word shame, because I think that's what it is. It's a bit like you've been caught with your trousers down or something. Not that it's ever happened to me, but you're basically you're made to feel that you've done or said something that you really shouldn't have, that you've breached some sort of universal etiquette. And I remember a podcast that we filmed way back in the beginning when we had the lovely Tsitsi with us, and she talked a little bit about how money was in her culture. And it made me realize that across all different cultures, there is a different viewpoint about money. But I do think in the West, maybe the UK in particular, where we do seem to be wanting to keep it all a bit quiet. There is that list of things that you shouldn't mention when you go to a dinner party: sex, politics, money. It just annoys me that money is always on that list.
All right, Emily, can I flip it to you? Can you think of a time when you've brought up money and then thought, oh, I shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been so many.
You can have your own episode on it, Emily. What's your favourite moment? You're like, I shouldn't have done that.
Well, there was one at Christmas, actually. I was just with a really good friend and we were admiring her Christmas tree. And I said, oh, how much did you pay for that? She just looked at me and she said, what? How much did you pay for that? I wasn't being rude in that, oh, whatever you paid, it really wasn't worth it, because it was a beautiful tree. But doing your market research as to where to go to buy your Christmas tree surely is something that everyone does, isn't it? Would you think that that's an impertinent, misplaced question? I don't know.
I think, particularly if you like it and you're looking at it going, would I want to invest that money to have that in my house? I think that's a fine question to ask.
And that's a really important distinction there, Jennifer, because I am one of those people, if people just ask me randomly, what did I spend to get things? If it's for the purpose of they're doing research because they also want to buy a tree like mine, I'm cool with sharing that. If they just want to know for the hell of it, then that I'm not as okay with.
Yeah, no. Different if it's nosiness as opposed to that looks good. Is it worth it? Like, would I want it?
I don't like the sizing up. Anyone who, in fact, let me just tell you that just before this podcast, I said to my children, my daughter who's 13 and my son is 11, I said, I'm just about to record a podcast about talking about money. And I just like your view on whether or not you think it's wrong to talk about money. And they both my daughter said, yes, of course it is. I said, why? She said, because it's boring. And my son said, it depends, he said, if it's about bragging, then no. But if it's just because you want to understand more and learn more about money, then that's okay. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is that the reason that people don't get an education in this country is because people are scared to ask the questions. And also, that's all tied up with this, if you talk about money, you're bragging. So this is what this shows, this is what this podcast is about, isn't it? Is making people feel more comfortable talking about money. And it's not bragging. If it's for your educational purposes, if it's going to help you get to where you want to get to. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it is. I think what your son was saying, it can become quite nuanced. Because I know personally that I get out sometimes when people ask me things. There's a guy I work with, Peter. It doesn't matter what I've been up to. Peter always wants to know the price of it. Because I have zero memory. I don't know. I go and book a holiday. How much did that cost you? Can't remember. You only booked it last week. No, but I can't remember. Where did you book it? But where did you book it from? And I'll tell him. Then he'll go away, and then he'll come back and tell me how much I spent on it.
Oh no!
And I'm like, the first few times he did it to me, because he's really direct. What did that cost you? I'm like, what? I'm desensitized to it now because I get that that's just his way of being. That's just his thing. But like Monty said, I think it's nuanced. And what I'm curious about, what we all think, is who benefits from keeping money a taboo? Somebody's benefiting somewhere, aren't they? And that's why we don't talk about it. So I want to know who it is. Any thoughts, ladies?
I came across a quote when I was having a quick look at this. And the quote was, "Is not talking about money a privilege of those with money? Because why talk about it if it's no object to you?" Which I think is quite a flip side of looking at it, because that's not a judgment, is it? That's somebody saying it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't need to discuss it or know about it because I have it.
Yeah, it's a bit like you don't, before you get up in the morning, you go outside, you don't ask how much oxygen is in the air, because there's plenty there for what you need. So it's not something you think about or talk about.
But I just think it's quite an interesting perspective, because actually we know from all the stuff that we've done and we talk about, a lot of our money taboo is intergenerational, isn't it? It's what we were told as children, what we were brought up, what our families did and didn't do. Mine was very open about money. I'm very open with my children. I've got friends who weren't allowed to talk about money. They don't talk about money with their children, but that also I think means their children don't learn. So they're going to follow that pattern. So I think there's very different ways of looking at money being a taboo. It's not just one thing. People can have it as a taboo for many different reasons.
So what kind of reasons then do you think are out there?
So I think, one, it can make people feel uncomfortable, just uncomfortable in general. They don't want to be judged.
Yeah, it feels icky.
Whether it's because you've got it or you haven't, you don't want to be judged either way.
I think for some people it relates to their social status. So they never want to give an actual figure for it and then somehow go down within their social circle.
Can I tell a quick story about one of my clients? All right, so two lovely clients, and they lived, because they're not with us anymore, sadly, they lived in an ex-council house down in Ayrshire, and they had a significant amount of money, but nobody else knew apart from me. And it was really important to them that nobody else knew. And the reason they didn't want anyone to know is they were worried that it would change how the family interacted with them. If people were coming to see them, because they were elderly, they wanted them to be coming to see them because they wanted to see them, not because of what they might get out of the will at some point in the future. And so that is, so on the one hand, normally we're talking about, we're worried about being judged because we don't have enough. You've got that, I don't want to be judged and treated differently because of what I do have. And I just thought, that's really sad.
Yeah. It's a bit of a reflection of society, I suppose, what we see out there, isn't it? That we people look up to those with lots of money, or what can they get from those people with lots of money? And I've had people, friends like that and relations like that who want to keep it hidden because they don't want people to know what they have. They feel they'll view them differently.
In many ways, I think that's quite a healthy way to be, because at least it's acknowledging that there are people out there who associate value and worth with the balance of your bank account, whereas these people obviously realized that they sought to be good people and they wanted people to be friends with them and spend time with them because they were good people. End of, not how much money they've got in the bank. And that's actually a really cynical way to look at it, because I think they were right. And I think there are people out there that would take advantage. That's the sad thing.
I think it's
They're
that whole
discarding
murky,
themselves.
blurry line when we get our worth tied up with how many
Yeah.
pounds are in the bank. It's
Absolutely.
being able to draw this distinction that someone's going to come and see me, someone's going to be my friend because of me as a person, because I am valuable enough. I'm funny, I'm entertaining. So it doesn't matter what I've got in the bank. People just want to be with me because I'm a joy.
Mm.
And really modest.
As an example, I'm not saying that is me, though it does sound a lot like me.
Of course you are, Julie. And you're loaded. No, she's nodding. I mean, she's not. No, I think, yeah, absolutely. Self-worth, not net worth. Isn't that the
Yeah.
phrase?
Yeah, but I think it's one of the things you were saying, Michelle, at the start about the example in your workplace. Like, don't talk about salary. So making money, I think, not to be talked about is maintaining the status of the business owners, isn't it? So it's a power thing. So that's why I'm saying, why is money still a taboo? Who's benefiting from this? Why are we still entrenched in these beliefs? And if you look at all the things that you were never used to be able to talk about, right? There's loads of things that you just, even 10 years ago, you didn't talk about it. And now you can. I'm trying to think of some examples. And they're going to clean out my
Mental
head.
health.
Oh, mental health, yeah. Hands up who doesn't have mental health issues, right? We've all got them now and we all talk about it.
I think if you're human, you've got some issues somewhere.
If you're a human, you've got mental health issues. No, that's a good
It's
example.
great that we can say that openly and acknowledge it. And, people are posting about things on LinkedIn and other social media platforms about mental health, and that's totally accepted. And I think that's great. But I do think that on the taboo list, money is still above mental health now.
Yeah, you see, I feel conflicted now.
Do you?
Like, normally I know exactly what I think about a thing. But I'm sitting here and I'm feeling conflicted now because we're talking about money not being a taboo subject. And then mental health getting posted about on social media. Let's see, when people post about money on social media, yeah, that pushes my buttons. So there's some cognitive dissonance going on with me on this one. I'll hold my hand up.
Yeah.
Money's controversial, isn't it? I think it's always going to be controversial one way or the other, because we've all got such differing views on what it means, what we think means we're worth. And I suspect we've all been in a position where you may have a client come to see you, they need advice, but they say, I can't come to you because I'm not worth it. I don't have enough for you to deal with. And my response will always be, everybody should be able to access that advice. If I can't give it to you, whatever you need, I will signpost you to someone else who can. And I don't have any minimums personally when it comes to giving people advice, but it's just like, it's such a controversial subject, because whichever way it's brought up, I think there's always someone with an opinion, and we've all got opinions for good or for bad, but we've all got them, and we've all got judgments in us, which sometimes are more learnt than what we actually mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's, like whenever you're unpicking any of this stuff, there's like, there's the steps that you go through. So like, where did this come from? How is it benefiting me? So like of me, that came from my mom telling me that's a really cheeky question. Don't ask that.
Yeah.
So by not talking about money, I made sure I didn't get any more disapproval from my mom. So that was the benefit for me, not talking about money anymore. But it doesn't serve us, does it?
So your little story at the beginning there about you saying that to your mum reminded me of career development workshops that I've been helping out with. So it's all done online, and you have a classroom in front of you, not literally, but obviously through the screen. And they're allowed to ask you all sorts of questions about your career, because obviously they're doing their research to find out whether or not what you do is something they might be interested in doing. And of course, you always get the question, how much do you earn? And I think I've seen some other delegates sort of squirm a bit with that. But rarely would somebody come out and say, last year I put X into my tax return, kind of thing. Nobody would be specific, but they would, give a banding. And that's absolutely what you should do. And I don't think that anyone should ever say, like I have heard teachers say, oh, you can't ask that question. Well, hang on a minute. If you can't find out how much you're going to earn as a junior doctor, or maybe that's the wrong profession to choose.
I think we all know what they earn.
You can't find out what someone earns as a barrister, for example. How do you know you want to work your guts out in order to achieve that? You're not going to work your guts out without knowing what kind of lifestyle that's going to give you at the end. It's not about, we always say it's not about the number, but it's about what that number is going to do for you in terms of giving you the lifestyle and the life that you want. So
I think you make a really good point there, Emily. It's just pragmatic.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Education.
You take, like, if you want to be a vet, like, nobody has to stay in uni as long as vets. So before you start off in that 7-year course, you want to know what's my earning potential at the end.
Yeah.
How do you find out? You go and ask other vets.
It goes back to job adverts as well, though, doesn't it? Where they don't put the salary. Why would you not put the salary? Because you're not going to apply unless you know it's actually the salary that you need to maintain your house and your roof, your roof and your food. And it's just common sense. But why don't they put it? That's another taboo. They don't list what the salary is because they don't want to tell you.
That does my head in. Right. So if there's any recruiters listening or anybody in HR, see when you put something like that out, salary competitive or negotiable, to me, that's just a big red flag that you're not paying enough and you're embarrassed to say what you're actually paying for that role. So I'm not applying for your job.
Yeah. Or they're paying everyone in their company lots of different amounts for the same job and they don't want them to see it. Because if they're hiring someone new, they're maybe paying them more than what they are. They're already trained.
So it's a dick move.
It is. It's a horrible thing to do.
I've got the situation at the moment where my husband is the only engineer in what he does, and they're trying to employ another one. And rather than be like that, his employer has said, whatever we bring this new person in on, because it's becoming quite hard to find another my husband, they'll pay him. They've said, we will adjust your pay upwards only. We're not going to take it down to meet that person. Whoa. Which I think is lovely, because they're actually saying you are going to be equal. We do not want one of you being on a different salary to the other. That is unfair.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair way to be. But I can imagine there's many other employers out there who go, don't tell anyone what you're on, what we're going to pay you, struggle to get you, but you're on more than all of them. And that also gives that person a sense of superiority, and again puts that taboo straight back out there.
It's toxic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is when you're talking about salary, I think that is, to my mind, completely linked to worth, not self-worth, but in their eyes, what are you worth? And if, for example, in that case, Michelle, they had brought in somebody else, maybe younger, more junior, whatever, and paid him more than your husband quite rightly would think, I'm not worth to them what they think he's worth or he's going to be worth.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what makes people angry. And that's why people should be more open and honest about it. And of course, they should be putting the salary ranges at least on the job adverts. In the same way that you go to a shop and take something very expensive looking off the shelf, you want to know what's that going to cost you. And also, when you take a job, you want to know, what's that really going to cost me to take that job? Because actually there might be another job around the corner that's going to pay twice as much. So I need to know what the cost is of taking that job.
It's like going to a restaurant, isn't it, and picking a meal, and they go, right, the banding for this is somewhere between £10 and £40, but you can eat it first, and then we'll tell you how much it's going to cost you. And you're like, it's not worth the effort.
Yeah, and you can say, well, that's fine, but I'll be sticking my fingers down my throat if I can't afford it.
Oh, I think we've gone off on a tangent now, haven't we? So we're starting to get an understanding of why it's still taboo, because it's just inextricably linked to this sense of shame and fear of being judged, and the link to our own sense of worth. And it seems like we all know cerebrally that this isn't good. Emily's given some really pragmatic reasons why it doesn't it. How can we help people navigate it? Because we're not going to get rid of the shackles of money taboo overnight or in 1 30-minute podcast. We're good, but we're not that good. So what kind of small steps can we start to take to make it feel less like a dangerous conversation?
I would say my children's observations might be quite useful.
All right.
Don't talk about money if it's boring, if you're being boring about it, or if you're bragging. They're two major things, two reasons why not to talk about money. But the reasons to talk about money would be, to educate yourself, to better your position, to small talk's okay, as long as it's not, it's with the right people and friends and it's not boring or bragging.
I like that. So Emily's kids' 2 golden rules are: don't be boring and don't be bragging.
Yeah, I've raised them well.
That's genius. And it's funny, do you know what it's making me think of? I went to a party once. So for those that don't know, I actually was brought up in England, not far from you, Emily, oddly enough. Mm-hmm. And I went to a friend's birthday party and there were lots of people there that I'd never met before. And I'm going to offend the south of England now, apologies. Mm-hmm. But I think, is this a south of England thing? These people, they've never met me before. They're walking up, introducing themselves. First thing they ask me is, what do you do? What do you earn? I'm like, what the hell? Is that the most interesting thing about me? And I just kind of made things up. So I told the first person the truth, and they were really impressed because they thought I must be in banking. So I must be earning like billions. And I think by the end of the night, I was a trampoline instructor. I got fed up with the conversation because it was boring. So Emily, I think that they were ticking the box. It was boring, and they were bragging about what they did.
Anyone else got some tips? How to
I'd say stay away from the egos. So see the people who are bragging or doing, I would say not so subtle, humble brags for anything in relation to their money. The more you can stay away from that, I think your relationship with money can change. And then it isn't about the value or anything like that. It's about, I guess, if you enjoy what you do for a living, if you've got enough, if you're well resourced, rather than anything else.
I do love that word, enough.
But sorry, because Jennifer's just thrown in like one of my new favourite words. And that's
resource.
From the episode we did with Helen Johnson. It's this idea of being resource. So like if you're sitting there and if you think of money as just one aspect of your resources, and then you've got your family and you've got your friends and you've got the love that you feel for things and the things that you enjoy and all the different things that make your life meaningful and worthwhile. So you've got like this all you can eat buffet of stuff, of resources, and money's just one platter on it. It's sort of diminishing its importance because I think sometimes we inflate its importance, don't we?
Absolutely.
But if we can see it as just part of the array of things that we have to make life fun for us, that being well resourced, we love the resource.
I think also making money conversation normal. So I think we have a duty to our children or nieces, nephews, anyone that we're around to make it normal, not make it something that you can't talk about. So, I've always said before, I'm very open with my children. And if they ask me how much something costs, I'll tell them, whether it's high or low. I don't have an issue, and I encourage them to do the same and to talk about it, because I think it's just important for it to be normal. And then I think we wouldn't have some of the issues that we have nowadays where people don't understand.
I think that's a good point, especially because my background's obviously really different to yours, Michelle, because it wasn't something that was talked about in my house. And so it's being aware of the fact, right, well, I want Owen to grow up different to me in that respect. So let's make a concerted effort. And then the other thing I did, was this last year or the year before? Because you don't talk about salary, do you? Then I got everybody talking about the bloody salary, didn't they? And I think I went and publicly posted, didn't I, in a Facebook group about what my earnings were. Because everybody was telling me what they earned. I thought, right, well, some full disclosure here. And that felt really vulnerable to do. But having done it once now, if somebody asks me what I earn, I don't have a problem saying.
And I think my children will sometimes ask, Mum, what have you earned this year? And I'll tell them. And they may look at me and just go, okay. And I go, well, you know, you tell me what you earn, I'll tell you what I earn. I don't have a problem, because actually all the things that we have, and then you go back to that resources, all the resources we have available to us, part of it has come from that. You know, we booked a holiday and they wanted to know how much it cost. So I sat down and showed them what it was per person for them to understand, you know, what that meant. But they did have a bit of a shock when I said, you know, maybe in a year's time you'll pay for your own ticket. And they both just sort of looked at me and went, no, we're just not coming.
But I think that's really important, isn't it, for them to understand what that costs, because they might be thinking that they'll be going on these holidays every single year forever.
Well,
I'm sure you're not going to be paying them for them.
It came from that. They thought they were going to go on these type of holidays with their friends, and I was trying to explain that it was many years before I got to go on those holidays. And actually, when you're paying for it yourself, this is what it is per person. And they were just like, okay.
My daughter keeps telling me that she wants to go and do sixth form college in London. It's like, well, you've chosen one of the most expensive cities in the world, and no, that's not going to happen. And I think perhaps I should actually sit down with her and tell her what her life would look like if she lived in London, because she'd like to work at Starbucks, she said, but I don't think she'll have time for much study if she's working all hours at Starbucks to pay for her rent.
Can I share a small cautionary tale of what happens if you don't talk about money with your children? I will remove any names to protect the innocent. So an individual I know, their son is going to be moving out of the house, and they've bought him and his partner have bought a house. They've actually they've got the keys, they just haven't moved in yet because they didn't get that you've got to buy furniture and stuff. So the son turns to the individual, and he's not normally up for listening to his dad or asking his dad anything. And he's just turned to his dad and he goes, Dad, where does Wi-Fi come from? How do I get the Wi-Fi? So he didn't get that this is a service you pay for. Rumour has it that they think he might have thought it came with the house. So they've had to explain to him, right, well, you'll go and get a phone and an internet service provider and what have you, and you have to pay them each month, and that's how you get Wi-Fi. So I think this individual is T20, I think, or 21. And it's just because I can remember not that long ago, I was sitting there and Owen was next to me, and I showed him my phone because it was in the banking app. I just thought, I'm just going to show him what all the bills are. So I'm like, okay, so that one's the mortgage, that one's the gas and the electricity, that one's the internet. So now conceptually he gets, these are bills that I have to pay someone for to get that service. Whereas we've got a 20-year-old that's like, where does Wi-Fi come from, Dad? Not where do babies come from, where does Wi-Fi come from?
I want to live in his world. The one where you just don't know where anything comes from or how much anything costs because somebody else pays for it.
And the concern is that then, we've got kids growing, do they know that you have to pay for gas and electricity? I'm actually worried now that this individual isn't going to get, that there's bills that need to get paid and they're going to get into trouble. That's my worry I have.
That is definitely a worry.
No, my eldest was always said when we go through the bill, I think I've said it before, I don't like adulting. I said, neither do I. But unfortunately, it comes with the territory. But at least you're prepared for what may come when you move out into this apartment on your own, and you're going to have a car and you're going to have this and you're going to have that, because obviously that's what they dream about. And then you I feel a bit bad because you bring them back to reality with a little bit of a bump. But I think that's always better than the other way.
Absolutely. My wife would always call me the bubble burster because she always comes up with these really elaborate plans of, we'll do this and then we'll do this and then we'll get money from it. And I'm like, you've got all this tax and it's not actually that efficient. So now I just get called a bubble burster for any idea that she has.
Oh. And one of the things I keep thinking about when I think about how in history people have talked about money, and I think it must be because when I was younger, I read a lot of Jane Austen. I still am a real Jane Austen fan. And in fact, on my honeymoon, not my honeymoon, no, that would be awful. My honeymoon, on my hen do, my sister got me one of those Jane Eyre, what do they call it? Embassy dresses.
Oh,
as a Jane Austen character on my hen do. Anyway,
your hen do is much classier than mine.
And then just go and dance around a pole.
Maybe not.
Anyway, so in Jane Austen novels, don't they always sort of set the scene by saying Mr. Darcy with an estate or 3 estates in Norfolk, Cornwall, whatever, and then always say what his income is every year, and then you know, when a character is introduced, you know, with a dowry of XYZ. And this is how in Jane Austen's mind, she's sort of like putting couples together in her own little way. There's always somebody with a great big estate, but not much cash, who needs to go and find a woman who, you know, needs the estate because she's the second daughter, but she's got some cash. And, you know, this is how I think Jane Austen thought that people went around finding each other. Okay, there's then the love and the corset busting stuff as well. But there is that real undertone to the Jane Austen world of how to find a partner and who should we choose. And I think maybe that's just another podcast, actually, where we could perhaps think about.
I can go off on one about the Bennets, right? Because no, because she has misunderstood that woman. Because everybody's like, oh God, she's so mercenary, just trying to get all the daughters married off for the most money ever. The family were in ruins because of the stupid father. And unless she can get the daughters married off, their lives are going to be awful. Sorry.
I think that's another podcast.
I'll weigh my neck back in.
We could really go to town on the way Jane Austen portrays money.
Misunderstood characters
in the Jane Austen novels.
And should Tinder be linked with open banking?
That was rather random.
But if Jane Austen is very much going, we know exactly what other people are earning, and that's why they're going to be an eligible match, if that is now somehow relatable to now.
Yes,
that's 21st century Jane Austen. I bloody love that, Jennifer. That's genius. Just honestly, on a serious note, though, this whole idea about money being taboo, we've been taking quite a light-hearted look at it, but there are some really serious damaging effects of having money as a taboo. It can leave people feeling really lonely and really isolated, and can take a toll on people's physical and mental health. And I think that can't be underestimated. And like, you know, when marriages break up and what have you. So there are real benefits to be had by just making tiny inroads on this.
Certainly in the family situation, Michelle is a great example of where talking to your children about money, you know, is really helping her daughters grow up to be strong, independent.
Far too independent.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. It will be a good thing for them in the long run. You know, no point growing up oblivious. I think it's the social situations, which we haven't actually talked that much about. That's where you have to tread a little bit more carefully and have your friends where you talk about it with, and have your friends that you don't talk about it with, because not everyone feels the same, although you could try and push on that door to sort of understand why somebody is not wanting to even go there, because actually they might be hiding something that you might be able to help them with.
That's what I mean. I think it's really important if people who may be struggling with money or ashamed to tell people that they've got a problem with money, that they can, because they can only be helped. And I think it just becomes worse if it is a taboo and you feel you can't tell anybody, you can't tell your family, you can't tell your friends that you've got a problem with money. It's really important to be able to go to somebody and say, look, I've got this situation. I don't want you to judge me. I just need you to help me. And people will help you, and most often people won't judge you. And if they judge you, they're not the right people to be around. But it's important to be able to do that, and for people to feel comfortable that they won't be judged. So I think the more we make it normal, the more people will talk out. You know, I've had family members who have struggled with money and they've hid it for years because they didn't want them to know. And it's actually just got worse, whereas actually we could have helped, not by giving them money, but helped them manage their money and understand what options are open to them.
And even just telling someone a problem, even if no solution is provided, is just a weight off their mind. So that's helpful, just to talk, isn't it? Whatever the problem is.
What I would say is there isn't one of us that hasn't been in a mess with money at some point in time. Normal people. It's life. Yeah. We all make mistakes, but things all happen to all of us that we didn't expect, that we've all found ourselves backed into a corner at some point. So, you know, if this is you, you're not alone.
Do you know, I watched the Elon Musk show, and look at how wealthy he is and how successful he is now. But even he was describing a point where he owed money to every single person, bank, whatever that he could think of. You know, he clearly very much believed in himself, which is a great skill to have, although, you know, maybe he also had quite a lot of luck on his side. But yeah, just because you're in a situation now that doesn't look so rosy doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. And yeah, I mean, he pulled it out of the bag, didn't he?
But yeah, I'm not really up for endorsing Elon Musk. I'm sorry.
No, not really. But the point being that there's he probably wasn't beating himself up at that time, thinking, you know, he had no self-worth because he had a bigger dream. And maybe that's where you've got to go to sometimes, that you've just got a bigger dream, and it's not that you haven't made it, you just haven't made it yet.
Yeah, I think that might be another episode we need to do at some point, is failure.
Yeah.
We've done an episode on success. I think maybe it would be really healthy and really interesting to talk about why it's all right to fail at something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I'd be able to add anything to that one, Julie.
You can moderate the conversation. I shall bring my very long list of failures and devastation and tragedy.
Of course, I've got lots to add to that. Right. Okay, I think we've done the taboos.
All right.
Anyone got anything else to add before we say bye-bye?
No, I think that the key takeaway I'm taking from this is actually from your household, Emily. No bragging, no boring. If you're not ticking any of those 2 boxes, you're good to talk about money.
Yeah. And sometimes it's good just to ask if you want to embarrass someone.
Yeah. Are you thinking about something specific here?
Well, I'll let you into a secret. That friend that I asked about the tree, I knew she was going to behave like that. Knew she was going to get ultra embarrassed because she doesn't like talking about money. Just did it anyway.
Well, no, it's not playing. It's pushing boundaries and it's testing boundaries and it's trying to open her up to being able to have the conversation about money. Let's reframe it like that, Emily. As long as that's your intention next time.
Yeah.
You're good.
Right.
Okay, I think we've covered all the taboos. So like you said, Emily, we were talking about, like, where did this all come from? And who's it benefiting? And just what are some of the small steps that we can start to take to break it down, because it is not serving us, folks. So if you go and push a little boundary on talking money, do drop us a message and let us know, because we love hearing from you. But until next time, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for listening.